I never thought a single text message could destroy everything I'd built over 15 years of marriage. But at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday night in March, my phone buzzed with a message that would turn my husband into a stranger, my marriage into a battlefield, and my life into something I no longer recognized. I was sound asleep when David's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. "Sarah, wake up. We need to talk." His tone wasn't the gentle whisper of a concerned husband, it was cold, sharp, deliberate. I knew immediately that something was catastrophically wrong. I sat up, my heart already racing, and saw him standing by our bedroom window holding my phone. The blue glow illuminated his face, and what I saw there made my blood freeze. This wasn't anger, this was something far more dangerous. This was betrayal mixed with calculated fury. "David, what's wrong? What are you doing with my phone?" I asked, though part of me already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. He turned to face me, and in that moment, I saw our entire relationship crumble in his eyes. "Your boss sent you a text. At almost 3 in the morning. His voice was eerily calm, which terrified me more than screaming would have. I reached for the phone, but he pulled it back. "No, Sarah. You don't get to see it first. You don't get to delete it or explain it away. For once in our marriage, I'm going to know the truth before you have a chance to manipulate it." That's when I knew my world was about to implode. Not because I was having an affair with my boss, I wasn't. Not because I had done anything wrong, I hadn't. But because sometimes the truth is far more complicated than fiction. And sometimes being innocent doesn't matter when everything looks guilty. What happened next would tear apart not just my marriage, but expose secrets that went back years. Secrets that would reveal who my husband really was beneath the man I thought I knew. Secrets that would turn the victim into the villain, and the accused into the accuser. This is the story of how a single misunderstood text message became the key that unlocked a door I never knew existed, a door that revealed my husband's true nature and led me down a path of revenge I never thought I was capable of walking. I should probably start from the beginning, because context matters when your entire life gets turned upside down in the span of a few hours. My name is Sarah Chen, and up until that night, I genuinely believed I was living a blessed life. I had been married to David Morrison for 15 years. We met in college, dated for 3 years, and got married right after graduation. David worked as a financial advisor, and I had worked my way up to senior marketing manager at Hartwell & Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm. We lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom house in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. We had 2 kids, Emma, who was 12, and Jake, who was 10. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. David coached Jake's soccer team, I was president of the PTA, and we hosted neighborhood barbecues every summer. But here's what I learned that night: the more perfect something looks from the outside, the more rotten it might be on the inside. My relationship with my boss, Marcus Hartwell, was completely professional. He was 52, married with 3 grown children, and had founded the company 23 years ago. I respected him as a mentor and appreciated that he had recognized my potential early on. Over the 5 years I'd worked there, he had promoted me twice and consistently advocated for me during budget reviews. Marcus was also going through a difficult time personally. His wife Ellen had been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's disease 8 months earlier. It was devastating for their family, and as the disease progressed, Marcus had become increasingly overwhelmed, trying to balance caring for her with running the company. I had occasionally stayed late to help him with projects, and yes, we had exchanged personal conversations about the challenges he was facing. But it was the kind of support any compassionate colleague would offer. Nothing inappropriate had ever happened between us, not even close. The text message that destroyed my marriage was sent because Marcus had been at the hospital with Ellen. She had become confused and agitated during the night, and the doctors had to sedate her. Marcus was alone and scared, and he sent me a message that, taken out of context, sounded like something entirely different than what it was. But David didn't know any of this context. All he saw was a message from my male boss at 2:47 a.m. that read, "Thank you for everything tonight, Sarah. I don't know what I would do without you. You mean more to me than you know. I can't stop thinking about how you make me feel. See you tomorrow, I'll be counting the minutes." I can see how that would look bad. I can understand why David's mind immediately went to the worst possible conclusion. What I couldn't understand was what happened next, and what I discovered about the man I had shared my bed with for 15 years. David had been reading my text messages for months, not just skimming them when my phone was nearby, actively going through my phone while I was asleep, screenshotting conversations, and building what he later called case against me. He had been documenting every late night I worked, every business dinner, every conference call that ran past normal hours. He had been tracking my location through our shared family plan, and had even installed a monitoring app on my laptop that I knew nothing about. But the most chilling discovery was yet to come. David hadn't just been spying on me, he had been systematically isolating me from friends and family for years, so subtly that I hadn't even noticed it happening. That night, as he confronted me about Marcus's text, I tried to explain the situation. I told him about Ellen's diagnosis, about Marcus being at the hospital, about the context behind the message. I offered to call Marcus right then and there, despite it being 3 in the morning, to have him explain the situation himself. David's response was to laugh. Not a happy laugh, a cold, cruel laugh that I had never heard from him before. "Sarah, do you really think I'm that stupid?" he said. "Do you think after 15 years of marriage, I can't tell when my wife is lying to my face?" That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a hurt husband who had misunderstood an innocent text. I was dealing with a man who had already decided I was guilty and was determined to make me pay for crimes I had never committed. What I didn't know was that his revenge had started long before that night, and what I was about to discover would change not just my marriage, but my understanding of who David Morrison really was underneath the mask he'd been wearing for over a decade. The confrontation that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced in our marriage. David wasn't just angry, he was methodical, calculating, and frighteningly calm. It was as if he had been preparing for this moment for months. "I want you to unlock your phone and show me every conversation you've had with Marcus over the past 6 months, he demanded, holding out his hand. I complied immediately because I had nothing to hide. As he scrolled through our text exchanges, I watched his expression carefully. I was certain that once he read the full conversations, he would see that everything between Marcus and me was completely professional and appropriate. Instead, his face grew darker with each message he read. "Look at this," he said, shoving the phone back at me. "March 3rd, working late again tonight, but it's worth it to help you through this difficult time. March 15th, I'm always here when you need me. March 22nd, don't worry about taking time away from work. Family comes first, and I understand what you're going through." I stared at the messages, confused. "David, those are supportive messages to someone whose wife has Alzheimer's. What exactly do you think is inappropriate about them?" "The pattern, Sarah. The emotional intimacy. The fact that you're playing the role of supportive other woman to a married man going through marital problems." I felt like I was in an alternate reality. "Ellen doesn't have marital problems, David. She has a degenerative brain disease. Marcus isn't looking for an affair. He's trying to cope with watching his wife disappear piece by piece." David set the phone down and walked to our dresser. He opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a manila folder that I had never seen before. "I've been documenting this for 4 months, Sarah. Every late night, every weekend work session, every business trip where you come home talking about how challenging things are for Marcus right now." He opened the folder and spread photographs across our bed. Screenshots of my text messages, printed copies of my work emails, photos of me entering and leaving the office building, and most disturbing of all, photos of me and Marcus talking in the parking lot after work. I picked up one of the photos, my hands shaking. "David, you've been following me, taking pictures of me without my knowledge. I hired a private investigator 3 months ago," he said matter-of-factly. "I needed proof before I confronted you." The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. This wasn't the behavior of a concerned husband. This was the behavior of someone who had been planning something much bigger than a simple confrontation. "Proof of what?" I asked. "David, look at these photos. Marcus and I are talking in a parking lot in broad daylight. We're not touching, we're not being secretive. We're having a normal conversation between colleagues." "The private investigator disagrees with your assessment." David pulled out a typed report and began reading from it. "Subject appears emotionally invested in target male. Body language suggests intimate relationship beyond professional requirements. Subject has been observed staying late at office on multiple occasions when target male's vehicle was the only other car in the parking lot." I grabbed the report from his hands. It was written by someone named Detective Frank Morrison, and yes, that last name was not a coincidence. "David, is this investigator related to you?" For the first time that night, David smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Frank is my older brother. You remember Frank? He visited us 2 Christmases ago. He runs a private investigation business now. Very thorough, very professional, and very loyal to family." The pieces started clicking into place in a way that made me physically nauseous. "You asked your brother to spy on me and write a report that would support your suspicions, regardless of what he actually observed." "I asked my brother to investigate my wife's potential infidelity. He provided me with objective documentation of suspicious behavior." I looked through the report more carefully. Every innocent interaction had been twisted and reinterpreted. A photo of me laughing at something Marcus said during a conversation became inappropriate emotional intimacy. A picture of me working late in my office became creating opportunities for private encounters. A business dinner that had included 4 other colleagues became romantic dinner with frequent physical contact. But the most chilling part was the conclusion. Subject appears to be engaged in emotional affair with high probability of physical relationship. Recommend immediate intervention before situation escalates further. "David, this entire report is a fabrication. Your brother took normal workplace interactions and twisted them into evidence of an affair that doesn't exist. So you're saying Frank is lying?" "I'm saying Frank wrote the report you wanted him to write, not the report that the evidence supported." David's calm mask finally slipped, and I saw the rage underneath. "Don't you dare accuse my family of lying when you're the one who's been sneaking around behind my back for months." "I haven't been sneaking around anywhere. I go to work, I do my job, I come home to my family. The only person in this marriage who's been lying and sneaking around is you." That's when David delivered the blow that would change everything. "I've already spoken to a divorce attorney, Sarah. I filed for separation yesterday afternoon. I'm seeking full custody of Emma and Jake on the grounds of your emotional instability and inappropriate workplace relationships. The room started spinning. You filed for separation before you even confronted me about the text message. I've been building a case for months. The text message was just the final piece of evidence I needed. I sat down heavily on the bed, trying to process what I was hearing. My husband hadn't been hurt by a misunderstood text message. He had been systematically building a legal case to destroy me, using his brother's fabricated investigation report as evidence. David, even if you really believed I was having an affair, why not just talk to me? Why not give me a chance to explain? Why immediately go to divorce and trying to take my children away from me? David sat down across from me, and for a moment, I thought I might see a flicker of the man I had married. Instead, what I saw was cold calculation. Because this isn't about the affair, Sarah. This is about the fact that I've been unhappy in this marriage for years, and now I finally have grounds to end it in a way that leaves me with everything I want, and you with nothing. The honesty was more devastating than any accusation of infidelity could have been. You've been planning this for years. I've been planning this since Emma started middle school, and I realized I didn't want to be married to you anymore. But I needed cause, and I needed to ensure that I would get custody in the house and the majority of our assets. A cheating wife who's emotionally unstable makes that much easier to achieve. I stared at this man who had shared my bed, raised my children, and pretended to love me for 15 years, and realized I was looking at a complete stranger. The text messages, the late nights at work, Marcus going through a difficult time with his wife, that was all just an opportunity for you, wasn't it? It was a gift, David said simply. A perfect setup that I didn't even have to create. All I had to do was document it properly and present it in the right context. That's when I understood that I wasn't the victim of a misunderstanding. I was the victim of an elaborate, long-term plan to destroy my life, and David had been patient enough to wait years for the perfect opportunity to execute it. But what David didn't know was that I was about to discover something about his own secrets that would turn his carefully planned revenge into the worst mistake he had ever made. The next morning, David left for work as if nothing had happened. He kissed Emma and Jake goodbye, reminded them about their soccer practice and piano lesson, and told them he would pick up dinner on his way home. He was performing the role of normal dad so convincingly that I wondered how many other performances I had been watching over the years without realizing it. I called in sick to work. There was no way I could face Marcus or anyone else until I figured out what was happening to my life. After the kids left for school, I sat in my kitchen with David's investigation folder, trying to understand how my normal, boring life had been transformed into evidence of betrayal and deception. That's when I decided to do some investigating of my own. If David had been planning this for years, there had to be traces of his plan somewhere. He was meticulous by nature. It was one of the qualities that had made him successful as a financial advisor. He kept records of everything, organized files for every aspect of our lives, and never made major decisions without extensive research and documentation. I started with his home office. David had always been protective of his workspace, but I had attributed that to professional confidentiality requirements. Now I wondered what else he might have been protecting. His filing cabinets were locked, but I knew he kept a spare key in his desk drawer. I had seen him retrieve it before when looking for tax documents. What I found in those files made my blood run cold. The first folder was labeled Sarah Documentation and contained printed copies of text messages, emails, and photographs dating back 6 months. But it wasn't just communications with Marcus. David had been monitoring and documenting virtually every aspect of my life. He had screenshots of my conversations with my sister, my college roommate, and my mother. He had printed my credit card statements and highlighted every purchase that could be interpreted as suspicious, lunches that ran longer than an hour, purchases at stores near Marcus's neighborhood, even a yoga class I had joined that happened to meet near the office. But the second folder was what revealed the true scope of David's planning. It was labeled Legal Strategy and contained detailed notes about divorce proceedings, custody battles, and asset division in Oregon. David had been consulting with attorneys for over 8 months. Not just one attorney, he had met with 3 different divorce lawyers, apparently shopping for the one who would be most aggressive in pursuing full custody and maximum asset division. The notes were written in David's handwriting and included strategies for establishing pattern of neglectful parenting, documenting emotional instability, and creating financial dependency argument. One page contained a list titled Sarah's Vulnerabilities that included items like limited family support system, history of anxiety during college, no independent financial resources, and emotionally attached to children will agree to unfavorable terms to maintain contact. But the most chilling document was a timeline David had created, mapping out his strategy over the course of a year. It showed that he had been systematically manipulating situations to create evidence for his case. The yoga classes I thought I had chosen. David had suggested them after researching that the studio was located near Marcus's neighborhood, so he could later claim I was using fitness as an excuse to spend time in Marcus's area. The business trips that had seemed to increase over the past few months. David had been encouraging me to attend conferences and training sessions because travel looked suspicious and created more opportunities for evidence of inappropriate behavior. Even the private investigator surveillance had been strategically timed. David had Frank follow me during periods when he knew I would be having normal professional interactions with Marcus, then asked Frank to interpret those interactions as romantically suspicious. But what I found in the third folder changed everything. The folder was labeled Financial Security and contained documents that revealed David had been systematically hiding assets and manipulating our financial situation for over a year. He had opened 3 separate accounts that I knew nothing about and had been gradually transferring money from our joint accounts into these hidden accounts. The amounts were small enough that I hadn't noticed. A few $100s here and there, transferred just before payday so the timing looked natural. David had also taken out a second mortgage on our house without my knowledge, in Oregon that should have required both of our signatures, but David had forged my name on the documents. The loan was for $75,000, and the money had been moved into one of his hidden accounts. More disturbing, David had been liquidating my retirement account over the past 6 months. Again, this should have required my authorization, but David had power of attorney privileges that I had granted him years earlier for estate planning purposes, and he had been using those privileges to steal from my retirement savings. According to the documents in the folder, David had moved over $200,000 of our joint assets into accounts that only he could access. His plan was to file for divorce, claim that I had been financially irresponsible due to my emotional problems, and then hide the assets he had already stolen while fighting for the assets that remained visible. But the final document in the folder was what transformed my shock into fury. It was a letter from David to his brother Frank, dated 3 weeks earlier. The letter laid out David's entire strategy and included instructions for Frank's investigation report. But more than that, it revealed the real reason David wanted out of our marriage. Frank. The letter began, "I need this to be over soon because Jennifer is getting impatient. She's been understanding about the delays, but she wants to start planning the wedding, and I can't keep asking her to wait while I finalize the divorce proceedings. Jennifer." David had been having an affair with someone named Jennifer, and she was expecting him to propose once he was free from our marriage. The letter continued, "I know the investigation report feels like overkill, but Sarah's not stupid. If I just file for divorce without cause, she'll fight for custody and half the assets. But if I can prove she's unstable and unfaithful, I can get full custody, keep the house, and minimize alimony payments. Jennifer understands that this is the best strategy for our future financial security." David had been projecting his own infidelity onto me. He had been planning to leave me for another woman, but he wanted to do it in a way that would destroy my reputation, take away my children, and leave me financially devastated. The letter ended with a line that made my hands shake with rage. "Once this is over and Sarah is out of the picture, Jennifer and I can finally have the life we've been planning. The kids will adjust to having Jennifer as their stepmother, and Sarah will be too emotionally and financially broken to interfere with our happiness." I sat in David's office, surrounded by evidence of the most elaborate betrayal I could have imagined, and realized that my husband hadn't just been planning to leave me, he had been planning to systematically destroy every aspect of my life so completely that I would never recover from it. But David had made one critical mistake in his meticulous planning. He had underestimated the woman he was trying to destroy. I spent the next 4 hours photographing every document in David's files. I copied bank account numbers, attorney contact information, and every piece of evidence that revealed the scope of his deception. Then I called my sister Lisa and asked her to meet me for lunch. Lisa was a paralegal at a family law firm, and while she couldn't represent me directly, she could point me toward attorneys who specialized in complex divorce cases involving hidden assets and fraudulent behavior. But more importantly, Lisa helped me understand that David's elaborate plan had actually created the perfect evidence trail to destroy him. "Sarah," she said, looking through the photographs I had taken, "David didn't just commit adultery and hide assets. He committed wire fraud, mortgage fraud, and forgery. Those aren't just grounds for divorce, those are federal crimes." That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Sandra Chen, a divorce attorney who specialized in cases involving financial fraud. The second was to Detective Maria Santos at the Portland Police Department's Fraud Division. The third was to Marcus Hartwell, to explain what had been happening and to ask for his help in documenting that our relationship had been completely professional. By evening, I had filed a police report, retained an attorney, and started the process of freezing all of our joint accounts to prevent David from transferring any more money. But I wasn't done. David had spent months planning to destroy my life, and he had been arrogant enough to document every step of his plan. Now I was going to use his own meticulous record, keeping to destroy him instead. What David didn't know was that his carefully planned revenge was about to become the weapon I used to get my own revenge. And unlike his slow, methodical approach, mine was going to be swift, devastating, and completely legal. The man who thought he could manipulate me into giving up my children and my financial security was about to learn that the quiet, trusting wife he had been deceiving for years was much stronger and much smarter than he had ever imagined. David came home that evening with Chinese takeout and a smile on his face, still playing the role of devoted family man. He helped Jake with his homework, listened to Emma talk about her day at school, and asked me how I was feeling after my sick day. I waited until after the children were in bed before I made my move. David, we need to finish our conversation from last night, I said, sitting down at the kitchen table where he was reading emails on his laptop. I think we covered everything that needed to be said, Sarah. You can sleep in the guest room until you find somewhere else to live. I slid a manila folder across the table to him. Actually, I think you're the one who'll be finding somewhere else to live. David opened the folder, and I watched his face go through a fascinating transformation. Confusion, recognition, shock, and finally fear. Where did you get these documents? From your filing cabinet. The same place you've been storing evidence for your investigation of my imaginary affair. David's hands were shaking as he flipped through copies of his own records. Sarah, you can't just go through my private files. Actually, David, as your wife, I have every right to access financial documents that affect our joint assets. What I don't have the right to do is steal money from our joint accounts, forge loan documents, or commit wire fraud. But you already knew that. I pulled out my phone and showed him the call log from that afternoon. I've spoken with Detective Santos at the Fraud Division, Attorney Sandra Chen, and Marcus Hartwell. I've also frozen our joint accounts and filed a restraining order that requires you to stay away from our financial records. David closed the folder and looked at me with something I had never seen before, respect mixed with genuine fear. What do you want, Sarah? I want full custody of Emma and Jake. I want you to return every penny you stole from our accounts. I want you to sign a confession admitting that you fabricated evidence of my infidelity, and I want you to explain to our children why you're going to be living somewhere else while you await trial for fraud charges. David was quiet for a long time. Finally, he asked, and if I agree to all of that, then I'll ask the district attorney to consider a plea agreement instead of pushing for the maximum sentence for your federal charges. 3 weeks later, David moved out of our house and into a studio apartment across town. Jennifer, it turned out, was far less interested in marrying a man facing federal fraud charges than she had been in marrying a successful financial advisor with substantial assets. The divorce was finalized within 6 months. I got full custody, the house and every penny that David had tried to steal. David got supervised visitation rights and a 3-year probation sentence after pleading guilty to wire fraud and mortgage fraud. But the most satisfying part of my revenge was this: David had been so focused on destroying me that he had created a perfect paper trail of his own crimes. His meticulous planning became the evidence that destroyed him instead. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting someone's own actions speak for themselves. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was plotting against you? Share your thoughts below, and remember, the truth always has a way of coming to light, even when someone spends years trying to bury it. If this story resonated with you, like and subscribe for more true stories about betrayal, revenge, and the strength it takes to fight back when someone tries to destroy your life.